Okay, so let's scroll up to the top, and we're going to have a little bit of a introduction to chapter 1, talk a little bit about kinesiology. So kinesiology is the study of motion or human movement, but what we're actually going to be really focused on is structural kinesiology. And structural kinesiology is the study of the muscles as they're involved in the science of movement. So like I said, I want to make sure by the end of this course that we are focused on how to assess human movement, what muscles are contracting, what are relaxing, what's concentrically contracting, eccentrically contracting. And so all of your guys' majors require this course. And so in terms of reference positions, we have an anatomical position and a fundamental position. Anatomical position is what our model looks like with our palms facing up. Fundamental position with our palms against our sides. We'll kind of skip over the reference lines. In terms of anatomical direction, we have anterior, posterior, proximal, distal, superior, and inferior. Anterior being the front. Then you can see we have anterior medial, meaning to the front, but toward the inside or the midline. Anterolateral, again, understanding what lateral, medial means can help us decipher what these words are trying to tell us in terms of direction. So posterior being behind or in the back, posterior medial behind to the inner side, posterior superior, okay, to the back, but superior upwards. We have contralateral, which is the opposite side, ipsilateral, which is the same side, and then bilateral, which means both sides. Caudal, we're talking about kind of towards the feet, cephalic towards the head, deep and superficial in terms of talking about muscle, whether something's deep or it's superficial towards the surface, deep obviously meaning deeper down. Distal meaning away from the midline, proximal again being closer to the midline, so the phalanges are distal from the heart. Okay, lateral, medial. Okay, dexter meaning related to the right, sinister meaning related to the left or the left side of something. Prone, obviously face down. Supine is face up. I could also think my palms face down, palms face up. Dorsal relating to the back, ventral relating to the front. Palmar is the palm. I'm going really fast to these right now because I'm voicing over. But again, you guys can read this in your book as well. We have recurvatum, which happens with speed walkers. Valgus, which ladies, you guys tend to have a lot of valgus joint angles. And then varus is that kind of, bow-legged. And so we have certain cardinal planes. We have 3 of them. So the sagittal plane, which we also move on the frontal axis. Okay, so sagittal plane, frontal axis. We have the frontal plane or coronal plane. It's going to divide the body in half, or anterior, posterior. We'll move on the sagittal axis, as you can see in the picture. And then what we also have is we have the transverse plane, which is going to have movements going to occur on the vertical axis. So it's important to remember, which plane is the movement on, but which axis is that movement on as well. So we have the diagonal planes of motion, kind of go right over that. Movements and joints. This is something we would do in class with the goniometer, but like I said, we don't have class the very first day. So I'll make sure we understand some movement terminology. We have abduction or abduction, means away from body. AB, lateral movement away from the midline. Adduction, okay, is towards the midline. Bending, obviously flexion, flex your bicep. Obviously extension, extend your arm. Circumduction, circle your arm. Diagonal abduction, diagonal adduction. You could think of a baseball player throwing a baseball, moving the limb across a diagonal plane across the midline. External rotation, obviously moving around a longitudinal axis. Eversion, inversion happens when we kind of commonly sprain our ankle. Eversion, the foot moves outward. Dorsal flexion is the movement of the ankle towards the tibia. Plantar flexion, if you step on your tiptoes, it'll be plantar flexion. We discussed pronation and supination. So depression, elevation, kind of slouching or moving my Shrugging my shoulders up is going to be elevation of the shoulder girdle. Protraction is abduction of the scapula. Forward movement or retraction, basically bring your shoulder blades back, try to touch them. Rotation downward, the scapula moves medially and downward. Rotation upward is laterally and upward. And we'll be discussing that in chapter 4. You have horizontal abduction, also known as transverse abduction. So I'm on the horizontal plane, moving away from my body. Horizontal adduction, horizontal plane, moving towards the midline of my body. And then scaption is the movement of the humerus away from the body on the scapular plane. GH abduction, I'm playing at 30 to 45 degrees between the sagittal plane. I'm going really fast as I'm voicing over. We have lateral flexion, then reduction is coming back to the anatomical position. Palmar flexion is wrist flexion, dorsal flexion, wrist extension. And then we also have radial flexion, which means basically taking an anatomical position, taking my wrist towards my radius. Ulnar flexion, ulnar deviation, taking my wrist towards my ulna. Opposition of the thumb brings my thumb across my palm. Reposition of the thumb repositions it to the original position. And